Sandy Cortez tweeting at me, but she hasn't taken up my offer to actually meet and work together. And of course, we saw Beto acted like a total jerk and tried to use the deaths of these children as a prop to advance his political candidacy. When 9/11 happened, we didn't ban planes. We secured the cockpit.
Appears to be pretty self-explanatory there. There's Lauren Boebert on the Sean Hannity Show talking that same ridiculous talking point. We've heard all of them by now over and over and over again. But this one at least is, on 9/11, that tragedy happened and we didn't ban airplanes. Oh, that changes the whole game. Now you got me, Lauren. But someone did get Lauren. It was Mehdi Hassan. He did respond to this, as I'm sure many people did, but he tied it all together nicely here. Here's the tweet from Mehdi. Yeah, we didn't. We just reinforced cockpit doors, made everyone take off their shoes to fly, increased no-fly lists, passed the Patriot Act, invaded Afghanistan, invaded Iraq, opened Guantanamo, brought in a global torture regime for 3,000 dead, not 40,000 a year dead. Again, not 40,000 a year dead is what he pointed out there. And I'm not sure if we ignore those numbers or if it's just too inconvenient to listen to them. So that was Mehdi Hassan pointing back. I'm curious what her response would be to that. Probably something like that. But I did this morning because you guys talked about Ron Johnson in the first hour. Probably, let me choose my words correctly, the biggest piece of garbage that you can find among this debate. And it's really something to say because there's lots of them when it comes to this. He was talking about this. Actually, he wasn't talking about it. He was trying not to talk about when he was confronted. He was so ready to get away, he ran himself into a door he just couldn't go through. Watch.
Senator Johnson, see that. In the wake of this shooting, why not expand background checks, including on firearms and on gun sales? Why not expand background checks? Find that, Senator.
Over 1.2 million campaign donations there for Ron Johnson, looking for that locked door, something he really wanted to get behind, because if he got behind that door, maybe he could say something ridiculous like this to someone who would listen. He also had this to say, the reasons why these shootings keep happening, specifically Uvalde. Here we go.
Somebody for a crime they haven't committed yet. These are difficult issues, but again, the solution lies in stronger families, more supportive communities. I would argue renewed faith. We've lost that. We stopped teaching values in so many of our schools. Now we're teaching wokeness. We're indoctrinating our children with things like CRT.
It's CRT and wokeness is the reasons why that happened. It's weird. So we got banning airplanes. We didn't do that. Running away, trying to get through locked doors. CRT and wokeness. But Bill Cassidy decided to go ahead and give another one just bouncing off the wall that you may never know what could happen. Bill Cassidy said this about the problem.
Do you think that there is any room to ban assault weapons in this country? Why does someone need an AR-15?
Well, if you talk to the people that own it, killing feral pigs in the, whatever, the middle of Louisiana, they wonder, why would you take it away from me? I'm law-abiding, I've never done anything. I use it to kill feral pigs. The action of a criminal deprives me of my right.
You would think with over $2.8 million worth of those campaign donations, someone would have given them a better line than, hey, those 5 people in Arkansas that shoot feral pigs. That's the reason why we have to keep this going.
Okay, so, Ted Cruz also said it's the doors. The problem is the doors. If we just had one door, then all the problems would be solved. Unless, of course, there's a fire, in which case almost all the kids would die. So it's the doors, it's the wokeness. The wokeness, how's the wokeness? Teaching racism causes this shooter. No logical nexus. All they do is spout talking points. But Bill Cassidy comes by and goes, oh, Ron Johnson, Ted Cruz, hold my beer. Feral pigs, that's the best you got? Feral pigs. Like, you didn't even have the decency to think of a non-plausible but non-insane answer. Feral pigs, and then he says, and then that guy who's mowing down his pigs because he didn't want to bother taking 5 more minutes to kill him. Instead, he came in. Really, is that what happens with feral pigs? They come in with an AR-15. Like, that's how they kill the feral pigs? Really? Okay. And then he says, why am I getting inconvenienced? Now I got to shoot them one by one. Why? Because all of our children are dead. they're killing all of our children. Is that not a good reason to spend 2 more minutes butchering feral pigs? Have we inconvenienced you? Okay, the reason we put the numbers up is because all those excuses are obviously complete nonsense. The real reason why they're making sure there's no gun control is because they've all taken bribes. Millions of dollars in bribes. Be honest about it, Michael.
Yeah, I mean, first of all, now that I'm running for office, I understand you don't want to piss off the feral pig lobby, the feral pig shooting lobby. It's a big pig. It's not something you want to mess with. I'm more bothered by Ron Johnson's, because Ron Johnson was trying to be thoughtful, and it's the thoughtfulness that is pervading that party, and that's the scariest part for me, right? I mean, you talk about wokeness. Wokeness, even if you allow for it, which I'm not allowing for, but even if you go with that argument, wokeness started a couple of years ago. It's not like shootings just started a couple of years ago, right? I mean, these things have been happening all along. So all of a sudden, the reason it's happening is wokeness. So he has to now explain why it's been happening for decades in this country and why children have been killed since 1999 regularly in schools. So wokeness doesn't figure in here, and that's the line of thinking in this party. And then you see the money that goes to these people, and you understand why, as Cenk just said, why they are saying that these things are important to protect, whether it's Ted Cruz and the damn door, or Ron Johnson and his wokeness, or Bill Cassidy's pigs. That's what they're doing. They're trying to protect the National Rifle Association, which, by the way, is in trouble already anyway, and they can be stood up to now by Democrats and Republicans in ways that they hadn't been able to be before. They don't need these people.
I'm glad you brought up Ron Johnson, because there's another part about that. Because as I was saying, I talked about that this morning. Here's a quote from him as well. That we don't have this graphic, but I want you guys to hear this, because this is also what he said. We're indoctrinating our children with things like CRT, telling some children that they're not equal to others, and they're the cause of other people's problems. Apparently that's what's happening to these white children that are apparently being taught CRT, because that's what CRT teaches. In reality, if he'd actually maybe had some kind of an education about our history and our past, there were children who went to school during the desegregation era in the country, and you know how they were treated? I'm gonna read this quote again. They were telling some of these children that they're not equal to others and that they're the cause of other people's problems. It's exactly the way some of the people were treated as children growing up in our system. But maybe if you learn a little bit about American history and the horrific things we did to certain minorities because we just hated them, especially children going to school, maybe if you learn that, you would understand that you're flipping the script exactly on the reality of what we've already seen. It was very ironic to me when he said that. It's like there's black kids that went to schools once they desegregated them. There was mothers, fathers, other children screaming at them in their faces saying, "What are you doing here, you N-word? Get out of my neighborhood. You don't belong here. I'm gonna kill you." But that's his excuse now for why these children got killed earlier this week.
By the way, nobody, and Cenk, I know you have a lot to say on this, but the critical race theory is not taught to any of these people. It's a total fairy tale. It is not taught. So he can say it, and you can say it, JR, that yeah, you're 100% right there. But the only difference is that none of this is happening. None of it is happening to any of these killers, to any of these murderers, to any of the people that walk into these schools, or any of the people that are in the schools when they walk in either. They're not learning critical race theory. It is not happening.
All right, last thing here. So his theory is that it's because we're teaching about racism existing that people are getting shot. Okay, first, let's note for the record, it appears that the shooter was Latino and most of the victims were Latino. So what does this have to do with whites and blacks? It doesn't matter. It's fill in the blank talking points. And he thinks my audience, my voters, are deeply racist. So all I have to do is throw out a racist squirrel. Like, oh, we had a shooting, who cares? Don't you hate when they talk about racism? Squirrel, right? So, but let's break down his logic for a second, just in case, okay? Maybe it applies to Buffalo, what he's saying. He's saying, since you taught that white people were racist at some point to black people in this country, it's leading to shootings. But almost all the shootings, like in Buffalo, it was a white person shooting black people. So are you saying because we taught that white people might be racist, racist white people killed black people. Guys, look, if you're a Republican at this point, it's deeply embarrassing. I mean, Jesus Christ, if you think that is logical, if you think that's a sound argument, there's something wrong with your brain and I can't help you. So that's this dispiriting thing. I could convince you if you had any degree of intelligence, if your IQ was in the double digits. But if you think, oh, we taught racism, so that's why the racists had to murder black people, or Latinos had to kill other Latinos, you're incapable of logic. You're incapable of reasoning. All you hear from Ron Johnson is, doesn't it suck that we have to admit racism? Wouldn't it be great if we could just be terrible to black people? Oh, by the way, 19 kids got killed having nothing to do with this. I don't mind. As long as you're sufficiently racist, I will vote for you, Ron Johnson. That's what he thinks, and he's probably right. Almost all the Republicans are gonna vote for him because he's the racist candidate. And he's thinking, that's the perfect squirrel I need in a situation like this, so they don't talk about how I took $1.2 million in bribes from the NRA to have your kids killed. Thanks for watching The Young Turks, really appreciate it. Another way to show support is through YouTube memberships. You'll get to interact with us more. There's live chat emojis, badges. You've got emojis of me, Anna, John, JR, so those are super fun. But you also get playback of our exclusive member-only shows and specials right after they air. So all of that, all you gotta do is click that join button right underneath the video. Thank you.